We got it.
Good.
All set.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Special instruction to Maria to note whenever the two other people arrive, so we can continue the quorum call. So if you want to call a roll now, Maria, we'll go ahead with it.
Okay, Sherry Boye,
Present.
James Ellis,
Present.
Stephen Erman,
Present.
Madeline Fleury is not present yet. Justice Martin,
Present.
Archie McKee does not plan on being in this meeting today, and we have a vacant seat. We also have Jeremy Evans, Maria Bourgeois, Russ Kenyon, and Rachel Child, and there's Madeline. So there we go.
Oh, I just water. Don't worry.
Hi, Madeline. That will indicate that a quorum is present. With the arrival of Madeline, we'd have one vote more than quorum, minimum quorum. Accept the agenda. Is there any motions to accept or to revise the agenda? If not, please indicate that we accept the agenda by moving that. Anyone? Any changes? That's up to you.
I'll move to accept the agenda.
Steve Herman moves to accept the agenda as is. Second,
Nope, that's the first.
I'll second it.
thank you, Justice. All those in favor of accepting the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Very good. Public comment. Any public comment? That would be for anybody other than board members. Hearing none, we'll move on now to the approval of the previous minutes of July 13th, 2022. You all should have received those in your email.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
I'll second it.
Motion to approve by Justice, second by, I'm sorry, I missed it, Sherry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We'll now move on to bills and communications. Jerry?
No, I'll mention a couple things, but in the EDC meeting.
Okay.
Bills and
Very good.
communications.
Next is our treasurer's committee reports. Anti-harassment committee,
No report.
audit and finance. Archie's not here. Nothing that we know of any import for audit and finance, so let's move on to the next. Downtown revitalization and tourism. That committee, any report?
That's Archie's, I think.
Yeah, that's Archie also. Economic development.
Only report is we had a very good tour of our industrial sites in the north last week. And, Madeline and Justice and Russ and Jeremy and I were on the tour, and it was informative. And it helped to lay a good base, I think, for some of the discussions that we'll be having now relative to the leasing of land in Bombay, or a building in Bombay. And we will set up a tour to do the business park over in Tupper Lake in the near future.
Okay, thanks, Steve. The Entrepreneurship Agricultural Committee. Report, anyone? Alan?
I don't have anything to report.
Very good, no report. Governance Committee?
Justice didn't.
Yeah, governance committee, we had a committee meeting. We actually had a meeting a couple weeks ago and then a follow-up to go over the employee handbook as far as the vacation policy. So that's gonna be approved today, I believe, hopefully.
Yes, and something for all the committee chairs. I think it would be good for us to have the paper trail as to what we've done in terms of, first of all, a proposal being made that has to go to a committee. when it comes back, as in your case, for example, today, Madeline, I think we're going to ask each committee chair, when they put up the resolutions, to indicate that it is either approved or disapproved by the committee. So that way there we're guided, everybody knows where we're going. So like today, in your case, Madeline, that would be governance committee, RE 2022-24, amend the employee handbook, recommend that it be approved. And that way there we go on.
Okay.
Loan committee, Russ.
That'd be Sherry.
That would be in the, that would be in the other
That's
meeting.
in that EDC, right?
That's EDC meeting. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. You're gonna.
That's in the, that's
That's in
EDC,
our-
not IDA.
okay. But then there's a space and I wasn't sure what I was looking at.
No, you're good. So that's all of the committees for IDA.
Right,
Yeah,
okay,
we're in good shape.
very good. Treasurer's report.
Okay, for IDA, just a couple notes. Our total assets at the end of July was a little over $1.5 million. Our total liabilities are just shy of $220,000. A couple of notes, where to go? We are considering a resolution today related to consulting services for engineering fees. I just wanted to point out for the board that if we approve that resolution, you'll see a big increase in the percentage. We'll actually go over our budget for other consulting services. That's on the profit and loss versus actual sheet. That's 5134. We've budgeted $10,000 for. This assessment will cost more than that. The time frame of the assessment, it should all happen this year, but it's okay. It's a budget, and we'll use everything from that budget line if approved. And the board always has the right to authorize expenditures. So I just wanted to point that out. It's for that. For the profit, for the budget versus actual statement. And I think that's all for IDA. Otherwise we're in good shape on our expenditures so far this year. I mean, we're more than halfway through the year, and our total expenditures for the year have been $129,000, and well, 130. Our budget is 350. So each year we've been coming in under our budget, and it seems like that will happen this year if we continue on this trend.
Very good, thank you. Anything else for the treasurer's report? Sherry? Oh, I'm
No.
sorry, I thought you had your hand up.
No.
Okay. All right, hearing none, move a motion to accept the treasurer's report as an order. Sherry, is care to make that?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, ma'am. Second,
I'll second, Steve.
Steve Irvin. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of accepting the treasurer's report as just given, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed, nay? Guys have it. Old and unfinished business. Anyone?
I have.
Anyone else? If not, then we'll move on to new business. We have a series of resolutions. First one is resolution number 2022-24. Amend the employee handbook. You all received.
No other agenda, Jim. Look at your other agenda for IDA.
One on top. Thank you. Yeah, would you do me a favor, Maria? Since you're a retired kindergarten teacher, would you kindly indicate on top which agenda we're dealing with, like anywhere near the date? Just,
I believe that's why we have it on its own letterhead, but if Jeremy.
yeah, I
wants
know,
to
it's
do
in
that, I
the
can do
block,
that.
I can't see it.
Well, we can add that. We'll add that. We'll try to remember to add that. You asked last month and we forgot because it is up top, but we will.
Well, that's it.
Right here.
From now on, the floodings will continue
Good.
until morale improves. That's all there is to
Let
it.
them continue.
All right. All right. Now we'll go to resolution 2022-07.
They use that. That's good.
Any discussion? And the committee has recommended this approval, I take it.
Well, no, it says, they're asking, are you just asking for approval to send it to Cetera?
Well,
I
it's already done.
Oh, okay.
There is a suggested improvement to the,
Oh, but you didn't have, put it all in there, right?
remember that was the one, by the way, that discussed
Oh,
when
okay.
a person leaving
Oh, that's right. I didn't.
has fulfilled other requirements for which they can be paid. Correct?
Right, so
Okay.
So two things happened since last meeting in general. We received a number of small recommendations and edits from Soteria on language that we should have in our handbooks in order to conform with state or federal law that we didn't have. Things change. So it's been great to have them review these handbooks and make those kind of suggestions. But then the committee met a couple times to resolve the vacation time language. And let me see if I had it here a second ago. What did I do with it? I just had it up. What happened to it? Oh, so, and the final drafts that were approved by the committee were emailed to you separately, not included in the entire packet. But what the committee came around to after discussions amongst themselves, but also getting feedback from Soteria, was that we would have vacation front-loaded to all new employees, and how much when they start, they would receive 1 day per month. So if you start in February, you'd get 11 days of vacation in that calendar year up front. And then on the back end, if someone leaves, they will not be given pay. They'll not get paid. They can't use their vacation, can't get paid out for unused vacation time. So they need to use it before they leave. And you know,
Only
there's a
what
couple.
Only
Go
what
ahead.
they've earned is what you're saying, correct? Like,
They front loaded.
so, right, but,
You don't earn it. It's front loaded.
Right.
so I'm still confused.
So you get it when you start.
Right, but didn't you just say it accrues? So same where I work, so say you get 30 days. I get it up front. If I use all 30 days and I say I'm done June 1st, they're gonna bill me. They're gonna take out the days that I didn't earn through the whole year. So that's how this is.
No.
Oh,
Different.
oh,
It's different.
You
and-
don't use what you. That's an interesting that's actually an interesting question, because if somebody
Well,
takes all of their time,
I mean, yeah, if you know you're getting
and
done.
then they,
Maria, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were informed that we cannot do that.
Correct.
so
We
somebody,
cannot bill an employee for that
Correct.
time.
so somebody uses all their time by
Right.
June, and they announce they're leaving in July, they basically, that's the way it is. They used up their time and it's done.
Yes.
And that's the way it, okay.
And
Correct.
that's, so we started out with what the board talked about previously. Maria, we asked Soteria about that, and that's not an option for us. And Sherry, I don't know that, Sherry, perhaps that is because we separate vacation versus sick time, and maybe it's different for general PTO, but under our circumstances, it was pretty clear we can't do that.
Right.
So this front loading was what we and the committee came back on. But if you leave, you better use your time
Right.
because you won't get it.
You won't be paid.
Right, if you used half your time before you left,
Right,
Yeah.
you will not get that paid out.
okay.
Now, a savvy employee will just ask for that to use that vacation time before they leave.
Yeah.
But that's where we ended up with the vacation question, which was really the only question that the committee considered. All the other things were edits to conform with state law.
In my understanding from my organizational experience is typically, you end up leaving more vacation time on the table if you announce you're leaving. And at the very end, you'll figure out how to use up that time
Right.
rather than, people don't anticipate, like, I think it's September or it's January. I think I'll work until August, then I'll resign. That's not typically the way it goes. And usually when you leave, you have a couple months at best of thought that you're going to leave. Unless you're coming to a retirement and then you know exactly when you're leaving for 3 years before that.
Right.
Right,
That was
Maria?
a joke.
Yep.
That was a
That
joke.
is the only instance that somebody gets paid for a maximum of 49 days of vacation. Because you can carry over 21 days a year, but the only event that somebody gets paid for vacation is retirement, and it's only up to 49 days.
Okay,
Any other separation, you don't get paid, but
Got it.
retirement, you do.
got it. Good.
Anybody else have any kind of questions? Folks, any questions besides the ones we just heard? Well, if we're all satisfied, then I would suggest that we recommend approval or disapproval of resolution 2022-07. I'm assuming it's recommend approval. Can I have a motion to that effect?
Make a motion to accept 2022-07.
And
Very good.
I'll second as a member of the committee.
Motion by Madeline to amend the employee handbook 2022-07, second by Steve Erman. Roll call vote, Maria, please.
Yes. Hold on. Sherry Boye,
Yes.
James Ellis,
Yes,
Stephen Erman,
Yes,
Madeline Fleury,
Yes,
Justice Martin,
yes.
Archie McKee is not present. Resolution's adopted.
very good. Moving on now to the next item is resolution 2022-09 to hire a chief financial officer. You all received that in your packets and read, I'm sure you read through. If not, Jeremy, do you have anything that you care
Can
to
we
add?
do a motion second first? Then we just have discussion.
Yep.
Okay.
Although, please, a motion to accept resolution 2022-09.
Gotcha.
Oh, Steve Irwin will move.
Second,
Sherry?
Sherry, second Sherry,
Okay,
discussion. Go ahead.
the only reason this is, you approved a resolution last month,
Right,
but the reason this is back in front of you is to make sure it conform. What we are doing with Paul matches the new handbook that you just approved, but is
Well-
different than the resolution you approved last month. So this is just clearing that up to make sure it's clear that how we're treating him and his vacation time is the same as what the new handbook is and not what you approved last month. Other than that's the same.
in state ed department jargon, that's called congruence.
Congruent,
This year,
congruent.
full year, and then another full year.
No, because he's only August.
Excuse me. Point of order. Please address any discussion to the chair, please.
well, I think the discussion is about the vacation time, because I think that was the issue the last time.
Exactly.
So I think what we're trying to detail here, what it is, so we get 5 days?
Yeah.
This year,
Like August, September.
and then 15 days next year, and then it follows the policy the following year, you get 15 days, but if he doesn't use them prior to when he leaves, he doesn't get paid for what he didn't use.
Right.
Is that correct?
So, yeah, that's, I think that's the way I understood it too. I just wanted to make sure that we had covered everything that we're supposed to cover with it.
Full 2 year would be 30. He's getting.
Right.
Further discussion?
Me.
If not, the vote on resolution 2022-09 is now to be taken by roll call vote. Maria?
Okay, this is for 2022-09.
It's a
Sherry
select-
Boye,
Yes.
James Ellis.
Yes.
I think you have to abstain.
Oh, I
Remember,
have to abstain. Thank you for reminding me.
Can I, a point of order question, what happens if we have 5 people now,
Yes.
not,
right, so
okay,
you'll still have a quorum.
okay, great.
Okay, so we're going back. Steve Erman,
You're right.
Steve Irwin, yes.
Madeline Flurry,
Yes,
Justice Martin.
Yes,
Okay, it's adopted.
Very good. Thank you. Now, resolution 2022-10, an engineering firm agreement. And Jeremy, if you could explain to us after we get into discussion. Is there a motion to adopt and then we can get into discussion? 2022-10.
I'll move to adopt, Steve.
Steve Irwin moves to adopt 2022-10 engineering firm agreement. Second. Second.
I'll second.
Second, Madeline. We're now in discussion.
Okay, well, first of all, I just realized I made a mistake in the packet. I apologize for that. I think everyone has had the proposal, but what's in the packet is not the overall proposal. I misread it, uploaded the wrong proposal. Anyway, the proposal is from Aubertine and Courier Engineers, and it's for a total cost of not to exceed $34,229. And the purpose of this project is to do a condition assessment of the Bombay factory. That's our larger property, the 60,000 square foot building. And this proposal, with this condition, with this project, they would look at code compliance, at different building systems. They'd look at site improvements. They'd look at the roof and mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and give us a assessment of the condition of all those systems and components, and also planning level cost estimates to fix, replace, add in, whatever the case might be, to the factory. This is something I've been working on a little while and finally was able to get a proposal from a firm. A lot of companies are really, really busy. And why we want to get it done is to give all of us, but especially you as board members, a better sense of what the financial liabilities are for that building. It's an incredible asset on the one hand, but it's not an asset that we can actually use. It's kind of weird. So we've done things like repaired the roof. We've looked at, if you recall, we had well, some of you won't recall, but a couple of years ago, we had a quote to replace all of the lighting with LED lighting, a project that would cost $50,000 to $60,000, but half of it could be reimbursed through different national grid incentives. So it would be easy for us to piecemeal different improvements and repairs and things like that, but to what end? And what's the total, what does it look like in all taken together?
Yeah.
And there's just certain things we just don't know. We don't know what it would take to have heat in that building again. There's no heat in the building.
Mhm.
What in 2022, what should we be looking at? Should we be looking at a central system? Should we be looking at different individual units that heat different parts of the building? And we just don't have any good information or data to provide the board to make informed decisions. So this is the first step in trying to do that. These guys work closely with a lot of different public and private entities, including Franklin County government. And we toured the buildings with them, and they provided this assessment, asked a few questions, but we feel that this is a reasonable proposal, which they can do in probably about 2 months, once we give them the go-ahead. We started going down this path a couple months ago, but it's actually becoming very timely because we do have an interested party in the Bombay factory, a company that would like to use it for several years. And we won't be talking in detail about that because it's simply a proposal that we'll be negotiating. But to be able to negotiate, to be able to act in good faith, and to give a proposal on how we might lease that building, we're going to have to answer some of these questions. So it became even more relevant because of that. So again, I apologize that I gave the wrong proposal. The proposal that's in there is for asbestos, in case there's asbestos containing material found. It's kind of a subcontract proposal. But what the actual proposal is $34,229. And I believe I wrote the resolution for
With that note.
35,
35,
not to exceed.
right?
As the maker of the motion, following up on Jeremy's point, as we start negotiating for the lease of that building, if those negotiations include, some improvements to the building on items that we know need to be improved, and that's possible, I would feel really uncomfortable moving forward with a knowledgeable company if we don't have a really good understanding of what our options could be to improve the building and what the cost of those options would be and what the potential payback could be in terms of cost savings. And one good example that Jeremy mentioned before about the lighting system. When we went and toured the building last week, we put the lights on, 60,000 square foot building. It took about 5 minutes for them to come up to full brightness. And in the time they were in the building, which was altogether maybe 45 minutes, we probably used up, I understand, a couple $100 worth of electricity. So, there's cost implications to keeping things as they are or improving them. And I think we really need the expertise on our side, basically, to arm us basically for a successful set of negotiations that put us ahead rather than behind when it comes to leasing this building.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else? Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
The quote that you had in there for the Atlantic Testing Laboratories, is that inclusive to the 35,000 or is that on top of? Is that like a breakdown of one of the testing?
Asbestos.
Yeah, it's let me just, where did it go?
Yeah, this is on top of it. We have to have it removed. By the sounds of it,
Is that-
subcontracting.
But they're just assessing it. Right?
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
sampling and testing and construction cost estimate if they find asbestos containing materials.
But is that included?
It's
with a not
included
to
with
exceed?
yes, it's included within the $35,000.
Okay,
I think that was the question, right now.
yes, that was the question.
Yeah.
So
It's actually one of the larger components of the overall cost.
So if the first look shows there's no significant asbestos in the building or let's say there's no asbestos in the building, the $35,000, 36,000, whatever we're talking, that ends up being reduced? Is that how we
Well,
understand?
Oh, that's point,
Yeah.
good point.
it's possible, yeah. But I think they made their estimate on the size of the building.
Yeah.
So they do need to do some investigation,
Just
and they
determine
can't
whether it's
just
or not.
do one place and call it that they've done the right level of investigation and sampling. So I don't recall the details, but they have to look at the whole thing.
Okay,
But it very well could be less depending on if,
okay. So we're basically talking about a contract with a cap
yes.
of
And
36,000.
I should say that
Not a fixed
with
price.
with this potential use of the building, we've talked to the company about how some elements of this may need to be fast tracked and given to us outside of the end product, the end assessment. Like, we still want the assessment in its final form, but we may need this part,
This
that
piece
part
first.
quicker in
Yeah.
order to be able to respond in our negotiations. So the bottom line is what you said, Steve, is that this is a not to exceed. And the moment that we need to adjust it for any reason, then it's going to be basically it's a time and material project,
Okay.
not to exceed 35,000.
Good.
Because where we're at, we're going to see changes along here.
As
And
they
we'll
get
have to
into it.
make
So
judgment
Atlantic
calls on how
Testing,
to
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
use the funds the best.
The Atlantic Testing Laboratories is under the general supervision of Auburn team?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Anything else, folks?
Doing this
Go ahead,
assessment,
Justin.
was this a requirement in order for us to be able to? Is this a requirement of the possible renter?
No, it's.
Is this something they're
this-
asking for?
No, this is something that we wanted to do regardless. Because, but having a bona fide potential tenant demonstrates the value of it. We have somebody who is interested in using some or all of the factory, but we have no restroom facilities. So the question for us all is, number one, what do we charge for rent but like the building is not habitable? So then the question is, well, if it's not habitable, what's it going to take to make it habitable? Well, we need a functioning bathroom. We need plumbing. Now, is $3 a square foot or $5 a square foot or $7 a square foot sufficient? I have no idea, because and for you guys, yeah, well, we're going to sign a lease, but we have to provide a functioning plumbing system. What's the cost of providing a plumbing system compared to the rent that this company wants to pay for the next 3 years? Is it a 1-year payback? Is it a 5-year payback? Is it a 10-year payback? I've got no answers. We've got no answers for you. Those would be logical questions for you to ask. We don't know. Same with the roof. The roof is leaking. We put $15,000 into the roof, and they did a great job largely repairing it back in about 2019, 2018. And that's held up. Like the amount of water that's going in is nothing compared to what it was, but it's still leaking. So, but it's, so there's like pinholes and other things that need to get patched. I don't know how much. I haven't been up on the roof in 4 years. Is that a $5,000 patch or in patching, or is it 50,000? And what's the expected remaining life in the roof? 1 year, 5 years, 10? No idea.
Right.
So if, let's say we need a new roof, does a roof, I don't know how much a roof on a 60,000 square foot building costs. It's gonna be a lot of money. Before we enter into an agreement, there's no way for us to enter into an agreement to lease that space without understanding the condition of the roof. You guys can't make good judgment calls on this with the information we have at hand. And so
So,
I'm glad we started this process because now we're here with a company that can ramp up and do this in a relatively short time span and be responsive to this inquiry that we've received.
I think Sherry, Go
so
ahead.
basically, we have an interest. So, so I'll just break it down. So you want to spend 35,000 to find out what's wrong with it and what needs to be done.
up to
Now,
35.
if they find out, okay, yes, we need a bathroom, it needs a new roof, it needs to be insulated. I mean, are we willing to throw $200,000 to $300,000 into this building to lease it to this person? I thought we were looking to sell this and then they can do what they want with it. Or do we put in 200,000 and then we'll never get our money back? I guess that doesn't make sense.
That's a good question. I think when we talked through as a committee in the field last week, we were thinking that it's possible that we could negotiate a lease where improvements are made by, first we know what needs to be done. Improvements end up being made by the lessor.
So how much is this
Let's
property
see.
actually worth right now?
And just hold for a second, Sharon, and if we, in order to make that kind of arrangement about them putting money into the building, we have to know what a reasonable lease cost per square for that building in its current condition would be. And then we need to know what the cost may potentially be. And ultimately, if the costs are high, if we find, let's say a roof, I don't think there's any indication that the roof needs to be replaced, but if that ever had happened and we end up talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, as you said, that gets to be a factor in our decision making. But we can't rely on a person looking to lease the building to say, this is how much we think it's going to be. We should have some steam, in a sense, on our side, telling us what those costs could potentially be to arm us to be able to have an appropriate negotiation. The whole question about whether we're willing to lease it out at what cost, as you said, and whether we're willing to upfront invest ourselves in the building, that's a major question for the board. And that's something we have to take up, but we don't have any of the knowledge right now to be able to have a knowledgeable discussion about that.
Well, what we do have is, what is the building worth today if we were to sell it?
We don't even know that.
I'll tell you what the.
Oh, there's
I
an
don't-
assessment on the property, on the tax
Yeah, but
roll.
I don't know,
so-
the assessment, the assessment is $1.5 million.
Okay.
But the assessor, I'm
I
sure,
don't think
has
it's worth that at all, but
Right, so I don't agree, I don't disagree with you, but that's the conundrum we're at. We're in a property that's assessed at $1.5 million.
and we don't know if that's accurate assessment. We don't know if the assessor I doubt the assessor's ever taken a look at the condition of the building to know. He may be saying it's a 60,000 square foot industrial building with the following amenities, and therefore it's valued at this. That may be, that's off the rolls anyway.
Right.
So, he may put $1.5 million on it. Maybe it's worth a lot less. Maybe it's worth more. We just don't know without knowing what the cost of bringing its condition to a point where it's a truly marketable building where somebody can walk in and actually use it.
Can I answer
I'm sorry.
Sherry, you had two related questions. And the first was, I thought we were looking to sell this. From all the discussions we've had, I've never felt like there was unanimity, and there's certainly never been action taken by the board to go just unload it. There's been a lot of discussion. And I think there's never been closure on it because there's too many unknowns, which leads to your second point, which is exactly what I would expect and hope that you would ask if we came back to you with someone interested in leasing the property, which is like, we don't have answers for you. I have no idea.
Right.
So we want to be able to get some knowledge about where this building's at. It's sat in this way, this state for far too long. And for us, for board members and staff, I think we're just tired of it being the way it is, and we want to get somewhere. And the only way we can start getting somewhere is to get you guys better information.
The other point is, I think, Justice, I gotta go back to you. Did we answer your question?
I guess my next question would be, has the potential tenant seen the building in its condition?
Yes.
And what was the response?
They're very interested in it.
So why can't we rent it to them? I mean, what are they saying?
So I'll give you an example. They might be interested in doing leasehold improvements. But we have no sense for what is required by code. We have no sense of what leasehold improvements would be appropriate versus for them to do versus things that we should be able to do, because they're not going to do leasehold improvements, I presume, for some building system that has a 30-year life when they're going to lease it for 3 years. They're not going to do that. I mean, we'll try, but I don't think they're going to do that. We need to actually be able to propose a lease that's at fair market value, because we have that obligation as a public authority. We've got to have a basis for how we're renting things. So we don't have a baseline. We're working on that. We don't have a baseline. If there are leasehold improvements to be considered, then that could be taken off of the baseline rent. But we don't have any values for any of that stuff yet. And then let's say that the tenant or the potential tenant said, we'll be happy to do X, Y, and Z. Well, is that what we want to happen to the building? Hopefully we're on the same page, but I would hope that we'd be able to turn to a third-party engineering firm working on our behalf to say, yeah, that's reasonable. That amount sounds right. And what they're proposing to do sounds right. They're not going to do anything that's going to be, something you won't want for the future. So this is a way to have the expertise on hand to know what we're getting is good, and that it's like that we're basing our rent on something. But this company is very interested, and they would be interested in leasehold improvements. But that's as far as we've gotten, because neither they nor us have good information.
I guess part of the question is that even if we were to put the place up for sale for what we consider to be rock bottom prices, just to get rid of it, we still have a problem. It's called asbestos. Knowingly to get rid of a building that has asbestos in it creates a problem of liability on our part too. And likewise with us leasing, even for rock bottom prices, with asbestos present in the building, you got another problem. You got a problem. So
I'm not thinking there would be asbestos. It's a newer building. It wasn't built like my old house I sold in the
we
early
don't know that.
1900s.
Yeah,
Well, I'm just
yeah,
saying, I remember when that was built because they were my customers at the bank and they weren't using asbestos back then. That's all I mean.
Sure, I know the pipe wrappings just from out being through the building are not
Yes,
asbestos.
And
So
They're
that's
not,
all
but-
fiberglass. We
Huh?
don't know about what may be up in the ceiling and things like this.
also the floors. I had a 1935 building in Tupper Lake at the high school where I was principal, and we found asbestos in places you wouldn't even expect.
Right.
And we had to go
Right.
through the whole thing with
I
air quality, the whole smear of taking it down.
And there are floor
This building
tiles.
was like,
There are floor tiles that are coming up and we don't know what they are. You're right.
I'm
That's what
presuming and hoping that Sherry is right.
Yeah.
So am I, but I know what you're talking about because
But
my house.
we've gotta check it, right? We've gotta look at it.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't really have any choice in one part of it, but I do think that if we have the money, we're able to do it. I think we should do it just to get it ready for the other eventuality, which is to put it on the market and say it's a clean building.
So,
Here's the
so
things,
my
here are the
next,
things, here are the things that need to be done. And we can negotiate a sale price if that's what we want to do. But the starting point is to find out what has to be done.
That's right.
so I guess
Go ahead.
I'll just go back to one other statement you made that at no time did we ever talk about selling buildings. Well, I do remember we did because there was a big issue about the Chateauguay building and leasing it and renting it. And I think I recall someone saying, well, you know, we don't want to be landlords and pick and choose who we rent to. It's better just to sell it and then it's not back on us if it was an unsavory business, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I was under the same assumption with the Bombay property. I mean, I get what you're saying about doing what's right, making sure there's no asbestos. But that's different than this whole scale. Because in my mind, will we ever get that money back if we're selling it? And these people that you are talking about negotiating with, you haven't even put a price on the table. So, I mean, say we come back with something that they won't commit to, and now we've got $35,000 into it or more if we start putting in a bathroom and all that. So we could be in 100, 200,000. And will we ever get that back if we sell it? These are just points that, you know, this is put on our lap, which I haven't even seen the whole proposal, only the asbestos. So I am not comfortable making this decision today. That's my
So-
take on it, and that's how I feel.
If I could. if
I just wanted to answer a question about, and this is, I mean, some of this is previous to your time on the board and it's continued through.
Right.
We have discussed it, absolutely. Sell it, keep it, lease it, everything in between, but we've never come to any conclusions that either I was comfortable saying we should
That's what I was
absolutely
gonna
do this or that, or that I felt like there was like some broad consensus from the board. And I attribute that to, we don't have enough information. So this is one way to get more information than any of us have, because I'm tired of going around in circles on it.
Right.
I want to give you more information so that we know whether or not it's worth putting $300,000 or $400,000 into it.
That's my
I guess-
recollection also.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Jim. That's my recollection also. In the time I've been on the board, we have had discussions. We did talk about the Chateauguay Park. I remember what Sherry said. There were individuals on the board who had strong opinions about keeping the properties, selling the properties, but we never had a vote by the board, property by property, about what we should end up doing. And I know when we energized our committees, we created this economic development committee in order to develop some policies for proposed policies for the board's consideration for each of these industrial locations in terms of how they should be managed, whether we should unload some, whether we should keep and improve some, whether we should buy additional properties adjoining them in order to enhance the value. And that was all something that we talked about as an important thing for the Economic Development Committee to be doing. So we're really, I think, if that's truly how we're supposed to be moving forward, I think that's a good set of objectives, but we don't have the information needed in order to make a really knowledge-based decision. And that's why I think, looking at what the assets we have committed to these sites already, I think putting $35,000 out for an evaluation of a building which may be worth $1 million plus up to $1.5 million is not a bad investment.
If I could just raise the other question is this a budget buster for us to spend 35, up to 35?
It's a judgment call. Like I said, we've budgeted $10,000 for consulting fees. We've spent 700 so far this year. So we do have that, and let's see, what do we have for, we have $13,700 in building maintenance contingency. That's not earmarked, it's just a contingency line that we could use it for. So if we look at just those two things, we can cover most of it within our, well, at least 2/3 of it within our budget.
Which, when you think about it, is you can be penny, it can be penny wise and pound foolish. I don't want to do that. I think we need to have the information in our hands so that we can make an informed decision as a board as to what can be done with that building after we see who may be interested.
I'm just looking at our budget. Our budget for the Bombay factory annual is $21,250. So empty, just sitting there is costing us, if we spend that much per year, which I don't know why it wouldn't, because that's pretty accurate. I think it's in that range. It's at least $15,000 a year to provide no value to us.
Very good. Other questions?
In the years that,
Other thoughts? Go ahead, Justice.
in the years that we've had this building, how much interest have we had in it? I mean, I believe a year or so ago, there was a farmer that had some interest in it. I don't know if he would have, I don't know if we even talked price, I mean. But there hasn't been, despite what it's assessed, what is it actually, what is the interest been? And what is it worth in that community? And with the little interest that we've had in the building, I think there's potential there, but my concern is to now put more money in it with no guarantee of getting it out. It just doesn't seem to be a wise move at this point. Why can't we bring this tenant to the table and see what their interest is for, I mean, they've been renting in other places with this project. What are they willing to pay a year, and what are their concerns? Like, are they concerned about the roof? If they're concerned about the roof, we can get an engineer to come look at the roof and figure out a solution. But it feels like we should have some kind of a guarantee of getting these funds back in some way before we put more money into a building that's already been sitting there for this long. So
I mean, we are having those conversations with that party right now. Like literally yesterday, literally tomorrow, that's what we're doing. To get details on what they're specifically interested in, and just that kind of back and forth. And, but again, we're gonna get into information and decision-making that we don't have this expertise to answer.
And there's a lot on the table. Let me ask Sherry, because Sherry is a commercial banker. Do you know an approximate value per square foot for industrial or commercial space? I mean, just an estimate off the top. Russ, do you know?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Steve?
For a building which is usable without any improvements for industrial space, let's say for warehousing, do you have a sense of what a decent value would be per square foot?
Well, in speaking with CDC Real Estate yesterday, the rates in the realm of between $250 to $550 a square foot were thrown out there. But again, it depends very much on the condition of the building, and that is something that we just don't know how to assess at this point.
Okay, well, that's helpful, because let's say this. Let's say if it's $3 a square foot usable, That's $180,000 a year
Right.
in lease costs. Now, when you're talking $180,000 a year, and then let's say that ends up being the base, and they were willing to come to the table and say, we're willing to pay to a base value would be $180,000 for a building at this condition, but here's what's necessary to bring it up to that condition. You know, I would be very uncomfortable in a negotiation, frankly, without having some engineering expertise behind me to know that in order to get mold out of sections of the building, to be able to get, you know, bathrooms in place, to be able to secure the roof, whatever's necessary there to patch up whatever portions are seeping, not leaking, but seeping, and to do some of other improvements that they're going to require. Without having those values done from somebody who's on our team, I would feel very uncomfortable having a negotiation. I don't know how you have a negotiation that way. And the numbers are big enough, frankly, for potential lease costs of this over a couple of years that I think we'd be foolish, frankly, for not investing the dollars with a cap of $35,000 upfront to be able to do it. I think it is penny wise and dollar foolish, frankly, to move forward without it.
And I might point out something that while we're sitting here talking about it, it's still costing us $21,000 a year, even if we did nothing to it.
If I could mention too, I mean, if we don't know the condition of the building, then I think we're gonna have to, we have no negotiating power. We'll be at the lower end of the lease range. I mean, if we even get $1 more a square foot per year, that's $60,000 a year just for $1 more a square foot. You know, if we know the condition of the property, we have more negotiation power, I think.
A question on the assessment that they're gonna do. Are they going to also provide what the cost would be associated with fixing everything?
Yes.
Just high level,
Well, yeah,
because,
so at least,
yeah.
it has, you know,
yeah, just planning level estimates, right? Yeah.
so for each line item then in that.
Yeah, for the different components, right? Because at first they didn't mention that in their original. So that's something I asked them for, because that's what we desperately need, is not only to know what it is, but like, what would it take to fix, add, or replace? And what I'm very comfortable with doing, this will be I want to say easy, but it's not. It's more it's within our ability. Is once if the board comes up with an approach to this building, if we want to keep it and try to improve it, utilize it, whatever, and we have a conditions report, and we know what it would cost to actually get different components fixed. Some of these things we can get grant funding for. A lot of these things we can get grant funding for. But it's information, like a real information saying we actually need a new roof, and here's how much the new roof is going to cost. So I might be a very skilled and experienced and successful grant writer that you have on staff, but I cannot get you a dime for that building from grant funding, because we do not have the information required to fill out an application. Other than we did get a quote for lighting. But again, to the point, what's been brought up is, why would we spend, this is what we decided a couple of years ago. Why would we spend $50,000 or $60,000 on the lighting system, even if we get half of it back, when we've got it's still not a usable building. So we didn't want to move forward at the time because it was just a one-off thing that sounds good, but like, what does that really do for us? So the whole idea here is to give us a broader view of this entire property and what it would take if we chose to move forward with it. It might come back that it's $10 million to fix everything. And if that's the answer, then it's gonna be easy for us to all say, you know what, we gotta unload this as soon as possible. Instead of having mixed feelings about it and mixed opinions as board members. If it comes back that it's gonna cost $300,000 to fix, that's easy. But we don't have the information. That's the business Russ and I are in. We know how to do that, but we have no information to go and find those programs and get that funding. So.
I think the point is, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And that's really the biggest problem we have. I look at it again, I keep saying 21,000 a year, for what? If we had 35,000, 14 more, and our CEO just told us that, you know, we can, between taking from one line item in our budget, from another line item in our budget, we can cover 2/3 of that cost. I think that's the number, right? 2/3?
Something like that
Yeah.
already. Yeah.
If that's what, we have to have something on which to base our decision. And we have no decision at this point because we don't know what we don't know. So if I could, but I think the discussion is really, at this point, is there anything further that we can add to the discussion?
I got one item to
Yes.
add to it, which is interesting. We walked around the building and looked at that expansive structure. And the question came up, but how did the Economic Development Corporation end up with that building? And we said, was it a gift? And we were pretty sure it wasn't given to us.
Oh, that's.
So at some point in time, and we think about this for, you know, we have fiduciary responsibilities as board members of this organization. And I think we have to go back long before our time on the board to figure out what the basis, in a sense, was for this and what we as an organization have in this. And this may have been a Steve Dutton acquisition going way, way back. I don't have a clue, but we paid something. And I suspect in the condition the building was in at the time that the company left, I suspect it did not come to us cheaply. So, you know, I think we need to figure out as part of our strategy. I mean, we may be able to say collectively that it would be great not to be a landlord for a structure like this. But that's water under the bridge in a sense, and we got it. And we've got to figure out, I think, how do we maximize the benefit to the county of our having it or our disposing of it. And in both of those situations, whether we sold it or whether we leased it or whether we improved it, we need some information to inform us of how to move forward. And boy, I'd hate to be in a room with a bunch of guys people who are trying to make a deal on a building in the middle of Franklin County with the little bit of information that we basically have right now on what the building is worth and what the building could cost to improve and to retain over time.
So what's the next step with this possible tenant? Like, what, are they waiting on something from us? Like, what's the next step to coming to an agreement? What, are we waiting on this?
Yeah. Can we leave it this way? Let's say there was no tenant at this particular moment. We still have the building. We still have 21,000 a year. We still have a problem in knowing what we should be looking for, Justice, as far as getting that building out of our hair. So if that's the case, then there's no good answer except to say that for us to have the ability to deal with someone or even go on out and find a tenant, then we really have to know what it is would detract from a price if we didn't do it. We now have, if we have a rundown of what it's going to cost us to make that building how should I say it? To put it in a good enough category to sell. And somebody comes in and says, yeah, I want to buy the building, but I don't like this, I don't like that. Well, we can say, we already found out what, and that's part of the discussion that goes on with a potential tenant. Then either if you're going to do it as the lessee, then we'll take this much off the sale price or this much off the lease price. But we don't know what would be a good enough figure for us to be able to deal with. I mean, I just,
Have we considered an appraisal on the building as is? You know, hiring
We've
someone
had-
like that, because they will
Yeah,
point
we-
out,
we already have one, no?
We have one.
Yeah,
oh, you did, so you know what it's
Yes.
worth.
Well, I mean, it's
Yeah.
dated. It's dated and I'll forward it to everybody. So.
I just want to make a
how-
note, I have to leave at 2:30, so I don't know if you need me later than that, but I have a meeting at work I have to be at.
So Justice, we've shared some information with the board on Friday about this. It's like very, I mean, we're working on this on a daily basis and I appreciate Russ has put in a lot of work into this. He's agreed to kind of take point on this because he was the one that first talked with the company, but if the board would be happy to do an executive session and go into as many details as you would like. I'm hesitant to go into too many details because it's a negotiation. But in executive session, would be happy to give more detail, but yeah, we're working on these exact questions.
well, at some point we have to, I guess we have to trust the people that work with us. I hate to use the term for us, but I really think that we tie one hand behind their back unless we can just go ahead and say, we have this approval, doesn't mean we need to spend it. I can't move the question, but I'm just wondering if,
Well, it's already been moved.
oh, the motion, we're in discussion.
Yeah,
We don't have a vote on,
Right.
that's right. To move the question means to vote
Oh, to
on
vote, okay.
the
Yeah, it's already been-
resolution.
I would try to figure out which way to go here. If we put it to a vote and the motion fails, I've got real concerns about how we move forward with this prospect.
I'm acting as the chair. I'd like to vacate the chair and suggest that we make a motion with an amendment, and the amendment being that if the negotiations either break down or nothing goes further, then we don't spend the money. Does that help?
No,
It doesn't,
don't-
well, I think we still have an issue. I think to
That's
be,
not a question for me. I'm not the one.
No, I understand that, but the question is, I'm not negotiating.
I think we
You
should,
and Russ are.
if we didn't have this prospect, I think we likely would be still trying to market this building for either a user or for sale. And I think without the information of what it takes to bring this up to whatever the expected value would be, I don't think we're in a position to negotiate a lease or a sale with anybody.
Sorry.
That's the concern I have. I think we're at a point where we have a major asset on our hand, and I think we need to spend a certain amount of money in order to inform ourselves about how to move forward. So I'm a little frustrated by not being able to have us get to that point. I just think it's not for an organization like ours. We shouldn't be flying blind in this, frankly. I think this is not a budget buster. We certainly have the assets to do it. And maybe it'll inform us about what not to do in the future in terms of acquiring large, businesses, if there are any left, frankly, in the county for us to take over. But that goes back to the original decision about how it was acquired in the first place. It may not have been a good decision, but we're, I don't want to say stuck with it, but we have this building that we need to figure out what to do with. And rather than have it just sitting in place and deteriorating.
I guess we'd have to look back at that. You're right, Steve, on that. For some reason, I think maybe they had a loan for the building with us. I mean, it was a long time ago and maybe they defaulted because I know, I think he defaulted on a few things, the owner, so we may have gotten it back. Just as a thought. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Russ, do either you or Jeremy know
Could look it
how
up.
that transpired with respect to what Sherry just raised?
I don't.
I
No.
don't know, if you know anything, Maria?
I will look and find out the history of that and share it with the board.
Yeah, we'll look,
I was
we'll,
just curious.
Can we afford to table this for, and then do a special meeting perhaps in order to take it back up again? Maybe with an executive session at that meeting?
yeah, that would be fine. We would ask for that next week because this is, and I would ask the boards, I mean, I can do this as the CEO, but I would ask your blessing. I would be executing a interim contract with Albertine and Courier at a hourly rate so that we can put them to work immediately on the things that we need related to this negotiation for amount not to exceed $5,000 so that we can charge forward.
It's not ideal.
I'm sorry, I'm an impatient man in the sense of I can see the black and white, which is trade off 21,000 a year for 35,000 that we may have to spend in order to get the information we need. And I guess the problem I have is what the hell is the problem? There isn't, it's our responsibility, that building is, and I want to get rid of it if that's what we have to do, or I want to lease it so that we're not stuck with it. Can we go back to everybody else?
Oh, yeah. But they're all there, so go ahead.
Well, okay, so I guess my question is. I don't have any questions. I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
There. So I think I would like to see us come to a vote if we can do it. And I'm not saying prejudge your vote based on what I'm saying. But I would suspect that if we're at a point where we can make the move, then we should.
Well, Sherry needs to leave and we have an EDC meeting,
That's right.
so we should move along, whatever the result is, we should move along.
Okay.
And we can react, we as board and staff can react accordingly to whatever we decide right now. And then we can get the EDC meeting done and we'll react.
So we have a motion on the
So-
table.
it's all good. Yeah, this is.
We have a motion on the table that's been made and seconded. We've had discussion. Let's do this in two parts. All those in favor of moving the question, please signify by saying aye, and we can take a vote or not, depending on what you wish to do.
What
Repeat
what does
that?
that mean?
I didn't know what he
Question.
said.
I don't think we know what move the question means. I think, do
Moving the question means you vote on it or not.
you want to do roll call or?
Well, we're gonna have to do that as a result of doing what I just suggested.
What he's asking.
What's the advantage of doing it that way rather than just voting on it, Jim?
Oh.
Well,
I see.
all right, I'll vacate the chair again and I'll say I move the question. And I'll ask Maria to go ahead and do the roll call.
You always take it back up again.
Okay, this is for resolution 2022-10. And Sherry Boye,
No,
James Ellis,
Yes,
Stephen Erman,
Yes,
Madeline Flurry,
Yes.
Justice Martin,
Yes.
Okay, so that is a minimum of 4 votes and that is adopted to move forward.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. And Sherry, we thank you for your input because I think that's important. But we still really want to know how the hell we got the building. So if you could do that for us, Maria.
I will do
find
that and
out.
email it to you, absolutely.
And
Okay.
Maria, when we send that out, let's send the most recent appraisal out for the building to the
Okay.
board as well. And we'll keep updating the board on everything else related to the building. If you want to have a conversation with me, please reach out. We can talk one-on-one or reach out to Russ.
Very good. Sherry, thank you for staying with us.
You're welcome.
Is there any other business to come before the IDA? If not, the date of our next meeting will be September 14th. All those in favor of adjourning this part of the meeting, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Fine. We're going to request a 5-minute old man break